So, Batman v Superman is probably the biggest movie to come out since The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
It's been marketed for about 3 years now. Anticipation's running extremely high, and it came out and was pretty much instantly set on by everyone in the world of film criticism. I think it's 29% on Rotten Tomatoes is almost surprisingly high, given like the vitriol that's been poured on it by its opponents. So we'll get into it in a moment, but as far as you can make out what the hell's going on, this is what it's about. So the opening of the movie is a kind of recap of the end of Man of Steel, which was criticized for the mass destruction and loss of innocent life visited on Metropolis by Superman and Zod in their big fight. And they're kind of dealing with that criticism now by replaying it from the perspective of Bruce Wayne, who is sort of looking around like, oh my god, this is awful, and like trying to save people and stuff like that. And then it jumps forwards 18 months, and Superman is basically a divisive figure in the United States. Some people view him as a god, and some people kind of fear him. And one of the people who views him as a threat is Bruce Wayne, and he starts to think about taking him out. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor is a kind of young, cackling, bizarre, sort of San Franciscan tech guy who runs a giant corporation that does something, and he's got a plan to do something, and his plot goes on. So here's a scene of Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent meeting at one of Lex Luthor's parties, and they exchange barbs.
What's your position, the Bat Vigilante in Gotham?
Daily Planet. Wait, do I own this one? Or is that the other guy?
Civil liberties are being trampled on in your city. Good people living in fear.
Don't believe everything you hear, son.
I've seen it, Mr. Wayne. He thinks he's above the law.
The Daily Planet criticizing those who think they're above the law is a little hypocritical. Wouldn't you say? Considering every time your hero saves a cat out of a tree, you read a puff piece editorial about an alien who, if he wanted to, could burn the whole place down. There wouldn't be a damn thing we could do to stop it.
Most of the world doesn't share your opinion, Mr. Wayne.
Maybe it's the Gotham City in me. We just have a bad history with freaks dressed like clowns.
Ooh.
So, I had a lot of fun before going to see the movie reading all the negative reviews, because people were really passionately and quite eloquently sticking the boot in, and I had even more fun reading more reviews afterwards, and I couldn't really find a criticism of the movie that I disagreed with. I think that it will become a byword for bad blockbuster filmmaking. I think, like, people will look back on, like, in future, like, it's just going to be the standard for a movie that went wrong completely. And in future blockbusters, they'll come out and people will be like, well, it did this almost as badly as Batman v Superman. It's a incoherent, unpleasant mess of a film. The plot makes no sense whatsoever. You could cut a lot of the scenes completely and have zero impact on the outcome of the story, and like not just individual scenes, but like long, elaborate sequences could be taken out of the film and just it wouldn't matter. The tone of it is really miserable and gloomy, and not in a kind of thoughtful, exploratory Christopher Nolan way, but just in a kind of teen sort of carving bullshit into their arm kind of a way. It's just like really gloomy, and the storytelling is not really clear enough for the movie to have a coherent message. But as far as you can discern a message, it seems to be opposed to the very idea of heroism. Like, that is one of the messages of the film. And it is hard to think of a more wrong-headed idea to put at the heart of your tentpole, universe-launching superhero movie. It's absolutely baffling.
Yeah. To start with, I think there was a lot of negative press or negative scuttlebugging. Is that a phrase?
Yes. Certainly is now.
On the internet, just because it seemed like a sort of bad idea to begin with. And the film is built on this premise of, like, who would win if Batman and Superman fought, which is more just a debate comic book fans had, rather than the basis of an actual plot. And so it begs the question, why were these two different but fundamentally good guys fight? And the movie never answers this in a successful way. And the conflicts in the movie arises from people not being fully aware of the situation. It's like them making mistakes or thinking someone's motivations are different to what they are. which makes the whole thing weightless. There's no ideological clash. They're not defined well enough as characters for that to really work.
No. I mean, it's weird because they spend some time setting up Batman's motivation. And he is actually pretty much the only major character in the film where you can actually understand why he does anything that he does.
Even though it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, he acts in a way that is stupid, often.
But
at least you can understand why he's doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas, I have no idea why Lex Luthor was doing, like, almost anything that he did. And Superman makes very few decisions. He is a very passive character in this movie. And there's a lot of discussion about him. But it's odd that all this time is spent giving Batman a reason to fight Superman, and no time is spent giving Superman a reason to fight Batman. He never really offers a viewpoint on anything.
No, he's a bit of a blank.
Yeah, he's a total blank, and it's odd because it does seem like you could, one of the things you would do is set up that kind of ideological opposition between the two of them, but they only did it for one person. And there's even a bit where Superman opens his mouth and is about to utter some kind of philosophy or statement or explain why who he is, and then there's just an explosion, so that's just cut off.
Yeah, sort of the movie in a nutshell, really.
It is kind of. Superman, his portrayal in the movie is one of the biggest problems. He is not heroic. He doesn't really do very many things that are heroic. There's a montage of him doing kind of heroic-y, saving people stuff, and it's like really sad and gloomy and weird. And it's like
he looks really upset about it.
He looks really upset and kind of miserable, like he'd rather be doing something else. And you'd think that it would be celebrating his feats, but instead it seems to view them all as highly suspicious. Like, the act of saving drowning people from a roof is like, whoa, why is he doing that? It's like, he's just gone to save people, what? Yeah. And the rest of the time he pretty much just saves Lois Lane or his mum just repeatedly.
A lot of damsels in distress in this movie.
Yeah.
In a way that's sort of depressing.
He's
I think
got
Lois Lane gets rescued 3 times.
3 times, yeah. Yeah, so Superman, as far as he does anything, he kind of acts like a bit of a dick. And he threatens people. He threatens people with violence. And his movement is already violent as well. Like, every time he lands, like, everything cracks around him. He's constantly, like, destroying things.
Yeah.
And Batman is also, a massive dick. This is, like, the biggest dick Batman we've seen on screen. Like, I understand that he's a kind of tortured soul, normally. And in this version of Batman, it's, like, old Batman. He's even more tortured. It's like, he's been in Gotham too long. He's gone a bit nuts, And he's like, now he brands people with the symbol of the bat. And then there's this bizarre line where Alfred is like, when they're taken to prison, anyone who has that brand is killed. It's like, and so it's kind of implied that he's deliberately
make kids' toys
marking
out
them
this
for
movie.
death. He marks sex offenders for death. That's one of the things he does at the beginning of the film. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I think a lot of the blame has been, and maybe rightly so, laid at Zack Snyder's doorstep. Because a lot of the flaws in this film are evident in his previous work and in Man of Steel. And it's like, he's sort of at the beginning is like, oh, he's addressing the sort of destruction porn of Man of Steel. But it's like, actually, no. And he
everything people hated 3 times more.
Exactly. And so he's this visual stylist who seems very interested in characters or stories, but interested in themes. But he never explores them in any coherent or deep way. And to the point where there's a bit in the movie where just talking heads on the TV screen just discuss Superman, and that's as deep as the movie goes. It's like you understand it would have made a good pitch, and then he never thought beyond that pitch. He's like, Superman, what does he mean when he's here? And it's like, I don't know. You tell me.
God? Is he Christ? What would it be like if God was here? Would people be worried? Yeah, it's not explored at all. You get the sense that some people in the world don't like Superman, other people like Superman, and that's really it. You sort of get the sense that Superman is a bit unhappy about it. Sometimes he says things, and other people give him advice, which is often very strange. There's one of the many perplexing sequences is suddenly he goes to an icy mountain and he's visited by the ghost of his father who's building a pile of rocks. And he delivers this anecdote about trying to save his farm and accidentally drowning some horses. And the moral of this story appears to be that whenever you try to save anyone, you just hurt someone else. So you can't really do it, You save someone from being hit by a car, but then they just get hit by a train the next day, so, what's the point? It's a very odd stance to take on the act of saving people's lives. I don't know. A lot of people have responded to the movie by concluding that Zack Snyder just hates Superman.
And it's easy to see how you can make that conclusion because
Absolutely.
he does seem to hate him.
Well, the whole notion of someone who represents the most virtuous American that you can possibly be, he's like the emblem of American values, who just is all about saving people and doing the right thing for its own sake, and is someone for people to look up to, is kind of taken in this movie as ignorant or like foolish or in some way short-sighted.
I think it's quite interesting with these big juggernaut films because it feels like the actors are being left to their own devices with mixed results. So Jesse Eisenberg is terrible in this film. He's really bad. And he's hamming it up to insane degrees.
Yeah.
And you can either view this as he's just like a hack or he's desperately trying to inject some life into the film. But either way, it's terrible.
It's not really maybe it's because he's not written in a consistent way.
Yeah.
And his evil scheme is one of the worst that I've ever seen in a movie. Like, I just didn't, every step of it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But he just kind of cackles and, like, he yelps and he makes constant random literary references and, like, it's just all over the place. And it's like watching an annoying YouTube vlogger. And people have compared him to, like, Max Landis, who we've talked about before, who is, you know, would be kind of annoying if he was a supervillain. And it is a bit like that's his tone, you know?
Yeah. It's like Zack Snyder just told him to do more, brilliant, more. Like Henry Cavill, he told to do nothing.
Deeper.
He's a bit lumping in the role, but I think Ben Affleck actually equips himself quite well, and he was the best thing in the movie.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed his take on the Batman persona, and I think he made a more convincing Bruce Wayne playboy type than Christian Bale. But that's more to do with Nolan's slightly clinical aesthetic, maybe. Ben Affleck seems like a guy who has sex with women.
Yeah,
yeah.
No one in a Christopher Nolan movie has sex.
And so, like, if nothing else, and he had good chemistry with Jeremy Irons, who also managed to squeeze some brevity into the film in his, like, 4 lines. Yeah, and, yeah, him and Jeremy Irons had good chemistry, and I would happily watch a solo Batman movie with them in it.
Yeah.
And I also think Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman was very good, mainly because I think she's the only person who smiles in the film. So when she turns up, she's also got this great, slightly cheesy electro guitar score.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like she has been catapulted in from a different, much more fun movie. And it's like, oh, thank God, someone here who's can fucking crack
She's got some
smile.
spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I really thought, and yeah, I'd see a Wonder Woman film as well. I thought they were, you know,
yeah, I think
made
that's definitely
strong
true. I actually saw a rumor that Ben Affleck rewrote his own lines on the set.
Yeah,
there was a news story about that, and he's probably one of the better written characters in the movie, so that would make a certain amount of sense.
I would say, for all its incoherence, the big problem is tone, and it's just not enjoyable. It's not fun to watch, and
yeah, it's not fun at all.
There's plenty of films that make no sense, which are just fun, and you can just, you know, and it's breezy. But this, like, is just so oppressively, suffocatingly turgid that I watched it purely to have an opinion, and I found it unintentionally funny. But I would really recommend it to someone so I could complain with them.
Yeah, you leave tired, you know? It takes a year off your life. My favourite thing about it is the conversation that it sparks afterwards, both with like other people who've seen the movie and just the general critical conversation, which I've really enjoyed being a part of, because it's such a fascinating failure in so many different ways. And it's also kind of made me a bit more interested in the character of Superman, who I wasn't particularly interested in before, but there's been so much discussion of him that it has made me want to, you know, check him out a bit more and see what it's like when it's not a total asshole.
So 5 stars?
So 5 stars.
5,000 stars?
Not everything was terrible, but almost everything was terrible.
I'm named the 2 things I liked in it.
Are you feeling comfortable? Film chat has begun.